The sound that ruined my career was almost silent, a faint hiss from the single AirPod my boss, Mark, had left on the table. We were at La Bernardine, celebrating what was supposed to be the biggest contract in the history of Apex Designs, a $200 million luxury eco-resort in the Catskills, a project I had built from scratch, night after night, coffee after coffee. Mark had stepped away to take a call from our CEO on his phone, but the Bluetooth connection never dropped. And right there, amidst the clinking of silverware and hushed conversations, the CEO's tinny voice came through, straight into my ear. "Is it signed yet?" the voice crackled. It was Gavin, our CEO. "Tomorrow morning, Gavin," I heard Mark reply. The client loved the presentation. Chloe did an impeccable job. My heart skipped a beat. A compliment? From Mark? That was rare. But what came next froze the blood in my veins. "Good," Gavin said, his voice cold and clear. "As soon as the ink is dry, you execute the plan. Let her tie the bow on the box, and on Monday we cut the ribbon. And we cut her. No fuss." My hand, reaching for my wineglass, froze mid-air. Across the table, the French investors were smiling, oblivious. Mark returned to the table a few minutes later, wearing that practiced, used car salesman grin that never quite reached his eyes. He raised his glass. "A toast," he said, his voice full of false camaraderie, "to the future of Apex." I smiled back, a slow, sharp smile. Inside, the floor had vanished, but a new foundation, made of ice and fury, was already beginning to form. The future of Apex, I thought, had just changed its address, and they had no idea. The expensive wine tasted like nothing. In the solitude of my Manhattan apartment, with the city lights blinking like silent witnesses, the memories flooded back in a cascade. It wasn't the first time, not even the second. 3 years ago, I led the Hudson Yards Tower project. Mark was on a sabbatical in Europe, but I managed every detail, from the foundation to the facade. I remember Gavin's email. "Chloe, your talent is the future of this firm." 2 weeks later, the promotion list came out. Mark, who had just returned, was named creative director. I swallowed the metallic taste of injustice and carried on. Then came the award-winning ski lodge in Aspen. When the next promotion came up, the head of HR took me for coffee. "Chloe, you're just too essential in your current role. Promoting you now would be shooting ourselves in the foot strategically." Mark called it taking one for the team. My phone buzzed, pulling me back to the present. It was my dad. I answered, forcing a lightness into the voice I didn't feel. "Hey, Dad." "Hey, sweetie, just checking in. I sounded tired last time we spoke." "I'm great," I lied, staring at my reflection in the dark window pane. "Are they treating you right over there? Do they see what you do?" I hesitated. A lump formed in my throat. "Of course they do, Dad." The lie burned. I hung up, and at that exact moment, a ping sounded from my laptop. A message from Leo, the bright intern from Cornell I'd been mentoring. The message had no subject, just an attachment and one line. "Thought you should see this. You didn't get it from me." I clicked. It was a PDF, Resort Division Org Chart, confidential.pdf. My name was nowhere on it, but Mark's was at the very top, in a golden box, Executive Director, Luxury Hospitality Division, the very role Gavin had informally promised me 6 months earlier. So that was it. I wasn't the future of the firm. I was the tool, used to build the castle, then tossed in the moat. I closed the file, the silence of the apartment weighing down on me. That metallic taste was back in my mouth, but this time, I wasn't going to swallow it. That conversation shouldn't have meant so much, but now, sitting in my dark apartment, it echoed like a prophecy. It happened 2 months ago. Jean-Luc, the mind behind the French investment fund, had invited me for coffee. Something informal, just us, his email read. I assumed he wanted to discuss a technical detail of the project away from Mark's ears, as he often did. We met at a quiet cafe in Soho, but as soon as our espressos arrived, I realized this was different. He didn't open his tablet, didn't pull out any blueprints. He just watched me for a moment, then leaned in slightly. "Chloe," he said, his French accent elegant, "allow me to ask. Your creative signature is very strong, very distinct. How do you manage that within a corporate structure like Apex? I blinked, caught off guard. It's a team effort, I replied. The standard line I'd repeated 1,000 times. He gave a barely perceptible smile. I have seen the reports your director, Mark, sends us. His name is on everything, but the structure, the soul of the project, it is not his hand, it is yours. The bitterness of years of being overlooked rose in my throat, but I kept my voice even. Shared credit is part of the game. Jean-Luc was unfazed. You are better than shared credit. He paused, glancing at a sculpture across the room. Look, I am not trying to meddle in your career, but if one day you grow tired of being underestimated, if you decide to build a legacy of your own, he looked directly into my eyes, we would be the first to invest. The words hung in the air between us. I let out a nervous laugh. That's a very generous hypothetical. I do not deal in hypotheticals, he answered, his tone serious, especially after I have already turned down a project from someone less capable than you. That hit me. What do you mean? He leaned back. We declined a proposal led by Mark last year, a convention center in Monaco. It looked good on paper, but when we dug deeper, it was a mess. Unrealistic deadlines, suppliers with conflicts of interest. It was amateurish. And when we asked for clarity, he raised an eyebrow. All we received were deflections. My stomach turned. Internally, that project had been painted as a near miss. No one ever told me they were turned down because of Mark. That conversation, which at the time felt like a bold compliment, was now everything. Jean-Luc had seen what Gavin and Mark refused to see. And suddenly, the question in my head was no longer, why did they do this to me? It was, what would it look like to build something that was, finally, mine? Seeds like the one Jean-Luc planted don't need sunlight to sprout. They grow in the dark, in silence, and sometimes in secret. After that coffee, something inside me shifted. I didn't walk out with a resignation plan, but with a question that refused to be silenced. What if? And once that question takes root, it changes everything. I told no one, not my dad, not my closest friends. I just started researching late at night when the noise of office politics couldn't reach me. I dove into guides on forming an LLC, into tax structures, into trademark law. I wasn't daydreaming. I was studying the blueprints for my own escape. A week later, I was in a discreet law office in Midtown, sitting across from a man named Mr. Davies. He'd been in-house counsel at Apex years ago, but left, as he put it, tired of the board's flexible ethics. When I told him what I wanted, he didn't blink. You want an ironclad structure, he said, his tone direct. No shortcuts, no paper trail leading back to your current employer. I nodded. I want it clean, and I want it to be mine. He gave a curt smile. We can do that. We spent the next 2 hours outlining the strategy. Mr. Davies filed the LLC under the name Keystone Studio, a name that was a statement, neutral enough not to raise alarms, but to me, it meant everything. Next, I opened a business account at a digital bank, quietly. It wasn't a real business, it was a lifeboat, but I knew it would soon have a precious cargo to carry. Still, I wasn't reckless. I didn't start transferring files or sounding out clients. If I was going to do this, it had to be flawless. But I hadn't counted on Leo. He found me late one evening in the server room, staring at the access logs as if they were written in Morse code.
"You're not in here checking backups for fun, are you?" he said, leaning against the doorframe. I turned, startled. "Just getting a head start on some things." He raised an eyebrow. "That's the worst lie you've ever told." I didn't reply, just closed the system window. He hesitated, then stepped closer. Whatever it is, if you try to download these project files to a normal external drive or your cloud, the security system will flag it on Gavin's desk in 5 minutes, he said in a low voice. But there is a right way to do it. There was a pause. I could have dismissed him, but something in his expression, loyalty, intelligence, courage, made me exhale the breath I didn't know I was holding. I took a small encrypted drive from my bag and held it out. No names, no details. Just the conceptual designs, my original source files, without the Apex branding, nothing proprietary to the firm. He took the drive without flinching. Give me an hour. And he did. That night, while most of the office was scrolling through Instagram, Leo quietly copied everything I had created over the last 2 years. The sketches, the renders, the feasibility studies. All original, all mine. When he finished, he handed me the drive and said, "It's on a clean partition, no metadata. You're good to go." "Thank you," I whispered. Before leaving, he paused. "Chloe, whatever you're building, it's already more solid than this house of cards they think they own." When the door closed, I stood in the dark, the drive cold in my palm. This wasn't revenge. Yet. It was preparation. It was my insurance policy. The flight plan I never thought I'd need, until now. There's a kind of pride that doesn't make a sound. It doesn't need applause. It lives in the quiet satisfaction of knowing you built something others doubted. That was the pride I felt as I scrolled through the final terms. It was 7 p.m. Everyone else had gone home hours ago, but not me. Not when we were this close. The total value of the Eco-Resort contract was $218 million, spread over a 5-year rollout. I had refined every clause: sustainability compliance, delivery schedules, data security, performance benchmarks. Every footnote had my fingerprints. No legal assistant, no ghostwriter. This deal didn't come from a team. It came from me. At 7:34 p.m., the notification popped up. An email from Jean-Luc. Subject: final review. The body was short. "Everything looks perfect on our end, Chloe. We are ready when you are." I leaned back in my chair, slowly. Ready when you are. Those words hit differently tonight. This was the kind of deal that defines a career, that turns architects into partners, directors into legends. Except I already knew. The legend wasn't going to have my name on it. I heard footsteps outside before the door opened. Mark strolled in, tie loosened, smile too practiced. "There she is," he said, clapping his hands lightly. "Did we get there?" I looked up, my face neutral. Jean-Luc just confirmed. They're ready to sign. Of course they are. He walked over and stood beside me, pretending to scan the contract on my screen. "You've done incredible work, Chloe, truly." There it was again, that tone. Too smooth, too tight around the edges. A week ago, I might have mistaken it for sincerity. But not now, not after what I'd heard. Still, I nodded politely. "Thanks." He lingered a second too long, gave my shoulder a light pat, and turned to leave. Let's make history. The door clicked shut. I exhaled, then hovered my mouse over the Send for e-signature button. My cursor paused. That inner voice, the one I used to silence, whispered again, "Wait." A few minutes later, the conference room door creaked open. Leo peeked in, his expression tight. "Hey," he whispered, closing the door behind him. I tilted my head. "Everything okay?" He walked closer, lowering his voice. "You didn't hit send yet, right?" "No, why?" Leo glanced toward the glass walls, then back at me. "I overheard something from HR. They're preparing a restructuring announcement and layoffs."
I frowned. "That's not unusual for the end of the quarter." "Chloe," he said, his voice firmer. "I heard your name." My stomach dropped, but I kept my face still. "Are you sure?" "Not 100%, but the source is solid." I turned back to the screen. The contract stared back at me, unsent. "They said to wait until next week to make anything official," Leo added. He didn't have to finish. I understood. If I sent the contract tonight, they'd have their crown jewel and no reason to keep me around. I closed the document and powered down my laptop. "Thanks, Leo," I said quietly. "We'll hold for now." He nodded and slipped out of the room. I stood there in the half-light, arms crossed, feeling a pride that radiated from a place far deeper than any promotion could reach, because, for the first time, I didn't need their title. I had the leverage, I had the client, and they had no idea what I was about to do with both. The morning started like any other, until it didn't. At 8:01 a.m., I swiped my keycard in the lobby of our Midtown skyscraper, holding the same reusable coffee cup I'd carried every day, the same elevator, the same automated greeting. Nothing was different, yet everything was about to change. The air on our floor felt heavy, still. As I approached my desk, I noticed the door to Gavin's office was ajar. Inside, he and Mark were huddled over a laptop. Their voices dropped to a whisper as I walked past. It was the first pang of unease. I sat down and turned on my computer. The login screen blinked and froze. I typed my password again. Nothing, just a small red warning, access denied. I frowned and reached for my phone to call IT, but before I could dial, an email notification buzzed. Sender, HR announcements. Subject, status update. Time, 9:02 a.m. I clicked, and my world tilted. Dear Chloe, this email is to inform you that your 1099 contractor agreement with Apex Designs is terminated effective immediately. Your system credentials have been deactivated. Please do not attempt to access company systems. HR will contact you regarding exit procedures. No salutation, no signature, just 5 cold corporate lines. I reread the email, disbelieving. It had to be a mistake, a system glitch. But when I tried to use my keycard on the door to the coffee station, the light blinked red. My Slack? Logged out. My email? Gone. My calendar? Wiped. I sat there, frozen, for a full minute. The only sound was the low hum of the fluorescent lights. Then my phone buzzed. Leo, they cut you off? I just saw it in the system. I barely had time to process that before another message came in, this time from Sarah, a junior architect I'd been mentoring. Chloe, I don't know what's happening, but I just saw. They reassigned the Catskills Resort project to Mark in the system. Your name isn't even on it anymore. That's when it truly hit me. They hadn't just fired me, they were trying to erase me. My fingerprints on the deal, my months of work, my leadership, my creation, all being buried in real time. Mark didn't look surprised when I passed him in the hallway 10 minutes later. He just offered that same forced smile and muttered, "Hope it all works out for you." It wasn't a farewell. It was a performance. As I walked back to my desk for what I knew would be the last time, I saw a small, plain envelope on my chair. No name, just sealed. I glanced around. No one was watching. I opened it. Inside was the encrypted drive Leo had prepared and a yellow sticky note in his handwriting. "You'll need this. It's everything you built." A lump formed in my throat. I had spent years building a reputation at that firm, sacrificed weekends, holidays, sleep, delivered every number they asked for, and in 1 minute and 5 sentences, they had erased me. But Leo hadn't. He remembered. He saved what mattered. I slipped the drive into my bag and looked around my office one last time. My degree from Cornell, the shelf with books on sustainable architecture, the empty chair where Jean-Luc had sat asking questions Mark could never answer.
And in that moment, something inside me snapped, not with rage, but with clarity. I wasn't walking out empty-handed. They fired me, but I still had my relationships, my knowledge, and now, thanks to Leo, my work. As I exited the building, the cool New York morning air hit my face like a second awakening. I didn't look back, because I already knew this wasn't the end. This was the moment they made the biggest mistake of their lives, and all I had to do was stay quiet and let them think they had won. That night, the silence in my apartment was unbearable. No hum of a laptop rendering a complex model, no Slack notifications, no calendar alerts, just stillness. I was curled up on my sofa, the only light coming from the laptop in front of me. On the screen was my project, My contract. The one I had spent nearly a year building, digital brick by digital brick. The one Jean-Luc had confirmed was ready for signature less than 24 hours ago. And now, it felt radioactive. I hovered the cursor over the file name. Eco Resort Contract Final V12, PDF. My finger rested on the delete key. I thought I was stronger than this. I had built my contingency plan, registered Keystone Studio, prepared a clean exit, but I hadn't prepared for the humiliation, for being discarded without explanation, without a thank you, without a trace of what I had given. I hadn't prepared for what it felt like to be invisible. The drive Leo gave me sat on the coffee table, a lifeline I wasn't sure I deserved. I stared at the blinking cursor. Just press delete. End it. Erase the evidence. Start over. Truly from scratch. Then, my phone rang. Dad. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something inside me cracked, and I answered. "Hey, Dad," I said, forcing my voice to sound casual. "Hey, sweetie," he replied, his voice gentle but alert. "You really okay?" I hesitated. "Yeah, just a long day." He was quiet for a second. Then he said, "I know your long day voice. What happened?" My eyes welled up, but I blinked them back. "It's nothing, just corporate chaos. You know how it is." A beat passed. Then came the question I didn't expect. "Do you want me to drive down?" That simple offer, so genuine. It hit me harder than any boardroom betrayal. My dad lived in Albany, 2 hours away. He hated driving into the city. But he would have come, no hesitation. "No, Dad," I whispered. "I'm okay. I just need to get through tonight. I'll be better tomorrow." He didn't argue. He just said, "You don't have to be better. You just have to be honest with yourself." I choked on a reply. "I love you. I love you too. More than any deal, Chloe. More than any job." After we hung up, I fell apart. My body shook with sobs I'd held in all day. The grief, the shame, the anger, it all poured out in thick, breathless waves. And when it passed, I sat in the stillness, hugging my knees, feeling small for the first time in years. That's when I noticed a blinking notification on my laptop. A single, unread email from 2 months ago, from Jean-Luc Moreau. Subject, "You know your worth." I clicked. "Chloe, I do not know what will happen with the deal, but I want you to know this. We have worked with dozens of firms, dozens of teams. You are the first person who made us feel our vision mattered as much as our investment. You are more than a project lead. You're a builder, a strategist. If you ever want to do something different, bigger, on your own terms, call me. We would back you without hesitation. Sincerely, Jean-Luc." I sat motionless, reading the email again and again. My tears had barely dried, but something began to shift. It wasn't just the words. It was the timing. Jean-Luc had seen something in me long before I had, before the contract, before the termination, before the humiliation. He had seen something worth investing in, and I had almost deleted it. I looked back at the drive, then at the file on my desktop, then at the framed photo on my bookshelf of my dad and me at my Cornell graduation, both of us beaming.
"You know your worth." I whispered it aloud, like a fragile prayer, not defiantly, just enough to hear myself believe it. I didn't delete the file. Instead, I renamed it KS Contract Signature Ready.pdf, and then I closed the laptop. Not because I was giving up, but because for the first time in 24 hours, I knew exactly what I had to do. Tomorrow wasn't just going to be a new day. It was going to be the first day of what was mine. The tables were about to turn. If you, like me, believe in second chances and in justice that might be delayed but not denied, take a moment to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss how this story ends. Resolve doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's the silence after the storm, the clarity that comes when you stop asking for permission. I hadn't slept much, but I didn't need to. Sleep is for healing. I was no longer healing. I was moving. The contract file, now renamed kscontractsignature-ready.pdf, was open on my laptop. Identical to the original, with one crucial exception: the letterhead. The Apex Designs logo had been removed. In its place, a clean, minimalist header, Keystone Studio LLC, and in the signature block, Authorized Representative, Chloe Jensen, CEO. I stared at it for a long moment. It felt surreal seeing my name like that. Not buried in the footnotes, not edited out of a press release, but leading, declaring, owning. I didn't flinch. Not this time. Before I sent it, I opened a secure chat with Mr. Davies, the lawyer who helped me form Keystone. I had contacted him late last night with a simple question: if I move on this tomorrow, am I bulletproof? His reply came 5 minutes later. Everything is clean. No IP conflict. Your contract is more robust than theirs. All systems go. I trusted Davies. He'd spent years at Apex and knew every one of their weak points, especially when it came to contracts and control. And this time, he wasn't on their side. I clicked on Gmail. New message. To Jean-Luc Moreau. Subject, as we discussed. Attachment, kscontractsignature-ready.pdf. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then I typed one simple line: "Thank you for your patience. I'm ready." And I hit send. The moment after was eerily calm, like the still air just before a bowstring is released. I closed the laptop and walked to the window, cradling my coffee in both hands. Outside, New York was waking up, a delivery truck backing up with a slow beep. Just another Tuesday. Except it wasn't. My phone buzzed. Jean-Luc Moreau. Timestamp, 3 minutes after I hit send. I tapped the notification. Approved. And yes, the funding is still on the table. You are doing the right thing. We will make the joint announcement on Friday. Congratulations, Chloe. I stared at the screen, not breathing. And then without thinking, I smiled. Not a smirk, not triumphant, just quiet, focused. Behind that one message was everything I had fought to believe in again: that my work had value, that integrity could win, that I didn't have to play someone else's game to build something better. A second message followed from his team. Please forward banking details for invoice processing. The first installment of the advance will be wired within 24 hours. 24 hours. The company that fired me by email was about to watch a multi-million-dollar transfer go to the woman they tried to erase. I sat down again, on the sofa. My fingers trembled slightly. Not with fear, but with control being restored, piece by piece. There was one more thing to do. I drafted a message to Leo. No subject. Just, "It's done. You saved more than you know." He replied instantly. "They're spiraling over here. Mark hasn't left his office, but I'm smiling." I let out a slow breath and typed, "Give it a week. Then let me know if you want to come build something real. No pressure, no promises, just an open door." Before closing my laptop again, I opened the file folder labeled Contracts. I moved the newly signed Keystone copy into a new subfolder labeled Executed. Then I renamed the main folder to Built on Trust. That morning, I didn't celebrate. I didn't pop a bottle of champagne. I didn't call my dad just yet. There would be time for all of that. For now, I just needed to sit with it. This new weight, this new direction, the risk I had just taken, and the fire it was about to start. I had signed the biggest deal in the company's history. Only it wasn't their company anymore. It was mine. Power doesn't always announce itself with a thunderclap. Sometimes it arrives quietly, printed in black and white on a screen. At 9:04 the next morning, the headline broke. French investment fund signs $218 million eco-resort deal with Keystone Studio. The news was first reported by Forbes. I read it once, then again. It was real, it was published, and it didn't mention Apex Designs. Not once. The article included a photo of Jean-Luc shaking hands with a woman who was expertly cropped out so only her arm and silhouette were visible.
The caption read, "New boutique architectural firm led by a former Apex strategist finalizes the largest luxury real estate deal of the quarter." Former strategist, not director, not partner, but the message was crystal clear to anyone who was paying attention. I waited for the fallout. It came faster than I expected. At 9:15, my phone started buzzing nonstop. Unknown numbers, former colleagues, even a journalist from Architectural Digest I hadn't spoken to in years. I ignored every call. Then a name flashed on the screen that made me pause. Mark. First call, then a second, and 4 more. I sent everyone straight to voicemail. Then came the text. "Chloe, we need to talk. Urgent." I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded the article link to Mr. Davies with a single line, "Prepare for inbound noise. I'm not answering anything today." He replied, thumbs up emoji and a note, "Proud of you. Let the silence do the talking." I was still sipping my coffee when Leo messaged me, short and fast. They just saw it. Mark slammed his laptop shut so hard I think the screen cracked. I couldn't help but smile. Another message came seconds later. "Claudia from marketing is walking around looking like her world just ended. She's asked 3 people, who the hell is Keystone Studio?" I hadn't told anyone the name of my LLC, not even Leo, until the morning I sent the contract. That anonymity made the reveal even sweeter. Now they knew. Now it was public. Now they were scrambling. A few hours later, Leo sent another update. "Just overheard Mark on the phone saying, 'We've lost all leverage. It's out of our hands.' He sounds defeated." That was the shift. For years, Mark had moved like he was untouchable, always a step ahead in office politics, always just charming enough to dodge the consequences. But this deal had exposed what Apex refused to admit. He didn't build the bridge. He just walked across it. I had built it. Every concept, every calculation, every sustainability provision. I knew the client's pain points, which legal teams needed more time, which metrics would make the investors say yes. And now, that knowledge had value, not as an employee, but as an equal. The contract didn't land where they thought it would. It landed exactly where it belonged. Their reaction was priceless, wasn't it? If stories like this, where intelligence beats arrogance, are what you're looking for, make sure you're subscribed. The best part is yet to come. There's a kind of validation that doesn't need trophies or applause. It arrives quietly in an inbox, with subject lines that make your heart skip a beat. It started with one. At 8:09 the next morning, I got a message from Maria Flores, Director of Development at the Amaranth Hotel Group. Maria and I had worked together for 2 years on every small renovation and major project. We had built more than a workflow. We had built trust. Subject, checking in. "Chloe, I just saw the news. I don't know the full story, but I know this. We want to move our account to Keystone Studio. Our board unanimously agreed. Our loyalty was never to the brand. It was to you."
I stared at the message for a few seconds before I could breathe out. Then the next one came. David Chen, the founder of a construction tech firm we'd brought on as a client last quarter. "Not surprised to see your name behind the deal. We always knew the magic wasn't coming from Apex. Let us know what it takes to transition to your new umbrella. We're in." 2 messages in 10 minutes. My inbox felt like it was pulsing. And then a third landed. Helena Cho, head of assets at a major real estate fund, a woman who once told me I was the only person in the entire industry who listened before speaking. "Chloe, we saw the Keystone Studio announcement. Let's skip the corporate games. I always knew you were the reason we stayed with Apex through all those budget cuts and reorganizations. Let's set up a meeting to plan the migration. No delay. P.S. I hope you're bringing Leo with you. That kid is sharp." I laughed at the last line and forwarded it to Leo, who replied instantly, "Should we start building a client wall for the new office? Because this email deserves to be framed." But the one that took my breath away arrived just before lunch. Subject, congratulations, from none other than Jean-Luc Moreau. It was short, direct, the way he always was. "We are ready to deepen our partnership.
When you are ready to talk about new product development, we would like to explore direct investment options in Keystone Studio. Let's set a meeting for next week." I leaned back in my chair. My heart was racing, not from fear, but from quiet awe. Jean-Luc wasn't just honoring the contract. He was offering to invest in my next move. Not because of Keystone's track record, there was none. Not because of Apex's reputation, they had been scrubbed from the equation. He wanted to invest in me. For years, I'd carried the weight of execution while others collected the credit. I stayed late, flew across time zones, translated technical jargon for boardrooms full of men who wouldn't remember my name until the numbers hit. I watched Mark smile and accept praise for my success. But today, the names in my inbox remembered, and they chose. They weren't chasing a brand, they were following trust. When you're in the right, you don't have to shout. You just have to show up with the facts and let the silence do the rest. The letter arrived by courier at 8:37 a.m. Heavy cardstock, Apex Designs letterhead, a faint but unmistakable legal department watermark. Inside, the language was pompous and threatening. "This correspondence serves as formal notice of pending legal action regarding tortious interference with client contracts in breach of intellectual property agreements." I didn't read the rest. I didn't need to. They were suing me. For what? For outmaneuvering them legally? For saving my own work? For refusing to hand over a contract they never actually offered me in the first place? I slid the letter across the table to Mr. Davies, who was sipping his second espresso in our shared meeting space. His reading glasses slid down his nose as he scanned the document with a dry, unimpressed smirk. I said, "Are they really doing this?" almost laughing. Mr. Davies shrugged. "Of course they are. This isn't about winning, it's about intimidation." I leaned back. "They want to make noise. They're losing control." "Exactly," he said, tapping the paper. "You took their biggest account, their best strategist, and 3 long-term clients. All legally. They're panicking." He flipped to the back page and let out a chuckle. "Look who signed this." I leaned forward. Matthew Reed, new in-house counsel for Apex. I'd seen him once at a conference. Polished, arrogant, young. Maybe too young. Mr. Davies laughed again and leaned back. "He was my intern, back when I still wore cheap suits and drafted actual contracts by hand." I raised an eyebrow. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious. I taught him everything he knows. Fortunately, not everything I know." He folded the letter and placed it back in the envelope. "I'll draft a reply today. You'll never see a courtroom."
"That confident?" Mr. Davies said with a grin. "Chloe, you were never a W-2 employee. There's no non-compete, no enforceable IP assignment clause that would hold up. They classified you as a 1099 contractor to avoid paying benefits and payroll taxes, remember?" I nodded. I remembered all too well. Every time I'd asked about becoming a full-time employee, they told me it was under review. They loved my flexibility, my ability to bill them without their having to pay for my health insurance or time off. They had kept me dangling for years, quietly useful, quietly disposable. But now, that technicality, the one they thought would save the money, was going to bury their lawsuit. Mr. Davies continued. "We will respond with a copy of your original 1099 agreement and your last tax filing. It will take 1 round of correspondence before they fold." He stood, adjusting his blazer. "And just to be safe, I'll blind copy the New York State Bar Association's Ethics Committee on our response." I looked at him, surprised. "You think it will go that far?" Mr. Davies gave a half smile. "No, but it'll make Matthew sweat." That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. Not because they backed down, but because I never had to raise my voice to be heard. This time, the law was on my side, and finally, so was the truth. Victory doesn't always come with a loud noise. Sometimes it hangs quietly in a frame. The morning light spilled through the tall windows of my new office in Dumbo, warming the polished concrete floors and the sleek, matte black desk I'd chosen just last month. On the wall behind me hung a single frame. No diploma, no press clipping, just a printed screenshot.
mounted under glass. On Monday, we cut the ribbon. And we cut her. No fuss. No name, no logo. Just the words. I brushed my hand along the edge of the frame, straightening it, as I did every morning. The message that was meant to end my career had become the cornerstone of my empire. The door creaked open softly. "Chloe." My dad stood in the doorway, his coat folded over one arm, his gray hair neatly combed, his smile a mixture of pride and wariness from the drive down from Albany. He insisted on seeing the new space in person. I walked over and hugged him. He held me tight, for longer than usual. "I brought croissants," he said, handing me a small paper bag. "Still warm." "From that bakery near your place?" I asked. "Of course. You think I'd forget?" We laughed. I led him inside and offered him the leather armchair by the window, the one I always pictured him in when I first dreamed of having my own office. His gaze wandered around the space, lingering on the bookshelves, the potted fiddle leaf fig, the stack of investor portfolios on my desk. But his eyes stopped on the frame. He leaned in slowly, squinting. When he read the message, his face went still. Then he exhaled, soft but certain. "They didn't fire you, sweetie. They set you free." I swallowed, nodding once. "Yeah, they did." He looked at me, something shimmering behind his smile. "And you walked out with the very thing they thought they were taking from you." I didn't need to answer. My phone buzzed once on the desk. I glanced at the screen. Forbes Daily Report. The headline: "Client Exodus at Apex as Keystone Studios valuation quadruples, sources say." I let out a quiet breath, then turned the phone so my dad could see. His eyebrows lifted slightly. "4 times?" he whispered. I nodded, still processing it myself. "And that's before we even launch our interior design division." He leaned back, his eyes misty now. "You always did color outside the lines. I just didn't realize you were drawing a whole new map." We sat in silence for a moment, the kind that holds everything left unsaid. Outside the window, the city moved as it always did, impatient, buzzing, relentless. But in here, there was space, room to breathe, room to build, room to become what I had always known I could be. Turns out, I didn't need their belief, just my own. I looked back at the frame one last time. The message that tried to erase me had become my centerpiece. They cut me loose, and I flew. This story is about turning a betrayal into the greatest opportunity of your life. And now, I'd love to know how far Chloe's journey has reached. Leave a comment telling me what city, state, or country you're watching this story of reinvention from. And if you love stories about women who refuse to be erased, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell. Every week we bring you a new journey of resilience and justice. Thanks for watching, and